Bihari. Gopijanavalabha Girivaradhari. Gopijanavalabha Girivaradhari. Yashodanandana Prasadam. Yashodanandana Prasadam. Nativa Vanachari. Yamuna Tira Vanachari. Vijanavalabha Girivaradhari. Vijanavalabha Girivaradhari. Nandana Prasadam. Yashodanandana Prasadam. Nativa Vanachari. Yamuna Tira Vanachari. Madhava Kunjavya. Krishna, 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 Hare Rama, Hare Rama, Rama Rama, Hare Krishna, Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Rama, Hare Rama, Rama Rama, Hare Krishna, Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare, Hare Rama, Hare Rama, Rama Rama, Hare Hare. Hare Krishna, Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare, Hare Rama, Hare Rama, Rama Rama, Hare Hare. Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare, Hare Rama, Hare Rama, Rama Rama, Hare Hare. Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare, Hare Rama, Hare Rama, Rama Rama, Hare Hare. Hare Krishna, Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare, Hare Rama, Hare Rama, Rama Rama, Hare Hare. Hare Krishna, Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare, Hare Rama, Hare Rama, Rama Rama, Hare Hare. Jaya Radha, Madhava Radha, Madhava Radha. Jaya Radha, Samasundara, Samasundara. Jaya Prabhupada, 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 Jaya Prabhupada. Jaya Jaya Prabhupada, 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 Prabhupada. Jaya Jaya Prabhupada, 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 Prabhupada. Nitya Go Hare Hare. Sabarivadikacharya Sudarsudashishmri Divine Guest Abitin Bhakti Swami Shilpo Bhadiki Jai Iskan Pandacharya Divine Guest Shilpo Bhadiki Jai Yodishma Param Sabarivadikacharya Sudarsudashishmri Divine Guest Shila Bhakti Swami Shilpo Bhadiki Jai Anand Guru Vaishnava Ki Jai Namacharya Shila Viras Thakur Ki Jai Prince Krishna Krishna Chaitanya Prabhutyananda Shri Advaita Gadadhar Shri Sri Gaura Bhakta Ki Jai Shri Shiva Hare Krishna Gopal Shyam Kanda Radha Giri Govardhan Ki Jai Vrindavan Dham Ki Jai Navadip Dham Ki Jai Mayapur Dham Ki Jai Ganga Mai Ki Jai Yamuna Mai Ki Jai Bhakti Devi Ki Jai Tulsi Devi Ki Jai Samaveta Bhaktavan Ki Jai Kandarajman Bhagavad Gita Ki Jai Nitai Gopavanande. All glories to the simple devotees. All glories to the simple devotees. All glories to the simple devotees. All glories, Shri Guru and Shri Guranga. All glories, Shri Prabhupada Ki.
Hare Krishna, Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare, Hare Rama, Hare Rama, Rama Rama, Hare Hare.
Hare Krishna and welcome to Bhagavad Gita as it is, overview, chapter 3, Karma Yoga. Just a sound check. Everyone can hear my sound.
All good, Prabhu. Thank you.
Thank you. Let us do the Mangala Charan. Om Jnana Timivandasya Gyananjana Shalakaya Chakshurun Militam Yena Tasme Shri Guruve Namaha Shri Chaitanya Manobhistam Stapitam Yena Bhutale Swayam Rupa Kadamayam Dadati Swapadantikam Vandeham Shri Guru Shri Utapara Kamalam Shri Gurun Vaishnavam Shri Rupa Sagrajatam Sagana Raghunatham Vitam Tam Sajivam Sadvaitam Savadutam Parijana Sahitam Krishna Chaitanya Devam Shri Radha Krishna Padan Sahagana Lalita Shri Vishakan Vitamscha He Krishna Karuna Sindhu Dinabandhu Jagatpate Gopesha Gopika Kanta Radha Kanta Namastute Tapta Kanchana Gourangi Radhe Vrindavaneshwari Vrishabhanusute Devi Pranamami Hari Priya Vanchakalpatarubhyascha Kripa Sindhubhya eva cha Patitanam Pavanebhyo Vaishnavebhyo Namo Namaha Jai Shri Krishna Chaitanya Prabhu Nityananda Shri Advaita Gadadhar Shivasadi Gaura Bhaktivinoda Hare Krishna 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 Hare 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 Rama 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 Hare Hare Om Namo Bhagavate Vasudevaya
Om Namo Bhagavate Vasudevaya.
Om Namo Bhagavate Vasudevaya
Om Namo Bhagavate Vasudevaya.
Om Namo Bhagavate Vasudevaya
Om Namo Bhagavate Vasudevaya.
Bhagavad Gita as it is, overview based on the teachings of His Divine Grace, A.C. Bhaktivedanta Swami Srila Prabhupada, the founder Acharya of the International Society for Krishna Consciousness. So let us cover feedback from yesterday's lesson that we covered, part 2. Anyone would like to share either on the chat or unmute your mic? Tell us what you took home, what you found interesting, what really grabbed your attention, anything you like to share. So yes, the camera is off. I understand, so don't worry. because the presentation on the broadcast, especially on YouTube, it interferes. So therefore, I'm not showing my camera.
Devotional service.
What about devotional service, Hari Bhakti?
Is the best. You can become free from birth and death by doing devotional service.
Yes, very good. So by engaging in devotional service, we can become free from birth, death, disease, and old age. And if we become free from birth and death, we become free from all problems of life. So very nice, wonderful. Thank you.
Krishna.
Anyone else like to share? Did we learn anything? When I saw the yoga ladder and saw the top rung is Bhakti Yoga, I thought of Srila Prabhupada, so merciful, gave us the highest. Yes. Srila Prabhupada was extraordinary, Hemavati Radhika, extraordinary in that he gave us the top rung of the ladder, which is Bhakti Yoga, and he gave it to us without any bias decision. It's not that he's biased and therefore he's giving that and saying that's the topmost. We'll see throughout the Bhagavad Gita, the Supreme Personality of Godhead makes it very clear in terms of the yoga ladder, what is on top, especially when you come to the 6th chapter. So Srila Prabhupada, understanding Krishna's compassion, Krishna's mood, and what Krishna wants to give us, we will find Srila Prabhupada presenting Bhakti Yoga throughout the Bhagavad Gita. Even in places where a verse may not be related to Bhakti Yoga, Prabhupada brings Bhakti Yoga in. So that we, from the beginning, we keep getting that point. We have been fed with that highest aspect of devotional service, which is the perfection of life. So definitely it is glorious, and more glorious in the sense of bhakti being on top. It's not even a yoga ladder. Lord Chaitanya Mahaprabhu has come to this world to give us the process of bhakti, and he gave us the process of an express elevator. With a yoga ladder, you still have to climb it. But with an express elevator, you just jump in, and the person who's managing the express elevator, he presses the button. You don't even do anything. All you have to do is move into the elevator, jump in. So that's the beauty of, and the fortunate position that we all are in, is that we are given the highest process, the most glorious process, the most powerful process by the mercy of Lord Chaitanya. Now it is all up to us, whether we are intelligent to understand that and grasp that and embrace it. So yes, Srila Prabhupada gave us the process of bhakti. Then karma kanda, requesting for material gain. Yes, karma kanda, which is also interesting, we're going to cover that today, is not really yoga, because yoga means to link with the Supreme Lord. Karma kanda is not really linking with the Supreme Lord. It's just fulfilling your material desires. But Krishna knows that the conditioned souls in the material world, they need their material desires fulfilled. So therefore, as a father, he provides and makes arrangements for souls to fulfill their material desires. Until again and again and again, nimitani viparitani. They try and they fail, try, fail. They, it keeps failing, and lifetime after lifetime after lifetime after lifetime, we keep failing, and we slowly begin to realize, hold on, something's wrong here. I need to do something. I need to change, because I've been doing the same thing again and again, chewing the chewed. I've been doing again and again, and I'm getting the same result. So I have to change direction. I have to change my perspective. I have to now change the process. And that is what Krishna and the pure devotees are revealing to us. Okay, very good. Thank you. Let us proceed. So chapter 3 called Karma Yoga. Summary of this chapter: everyone must engage in some sort of activity in this material world. But action can either bind one to this world or liberate one from it. By acting for the pleasure of the Supreme without selfish motives, one can be liberated from the laws of karma, action and reaction, and attain transcendental knowledge of the self and the Supreme. We know there's that famous law: every action has an equal and opposite reaction. Now, that law is true, but it's only true if you don't know the process of bhakti. If you know the process of bhakti, then every action does not give you equal and opposite reaction. And that's what this chapter is going to reveal to us. How can one act so that we don't get an equal and opposite reaction? We get actually a more glorious reaction, which is no material reaction and a glorious spiritual benefit. There's 4 sections to chapter 3, dealing with the confusion, renunciation, and working in Nishkam Karma. Then from Karma Kanda to Karma Yoga, then Nishkam Karma, acting dutifully with detachment to set the correct example, and then beware of lust and anger. So let us start with the first section, which is dealing with the confusion. So Arjuna is confused, and he's confused because in chapter 2, Krishna spoke about Buddhi Yoga. And then Krishna also spoke about Arjuna acting, fighting. Now, Buddhi Yoga, Buddhi means intelligence. So Arjuna is thinking, okay, Krishna, you're telling me to use my intelligence, then you're also telling me to fight. So am I meant to use my intelligence or am I meant to fight? Which one do you want me to do? So Arjuna is a little confused. And Krishna is going to clarify that it's not 2 processes. It's one process with 2 stages: karma and gyan, action and then knowledge, karma yoga and then jnana yoga. So there's 2 stages that Krishna has described, not 2 processes. And this is what Krishna is going to share. So this yoga ladder is extremely important, and we're going to see this yoga ladder developing through these chapters. 2 aspects which are very important for us to be elevated on this yoga ladder is knowledge and detachment. The more our knowledge increases of the Supreme Lord and the process of bhakti, the higher we evolve on the yoga ladder, the more we become purified and detached from material activities, material desires, then we go higher on the yoga ladder. We covered Karma Kanda, and Krishna is going to address that again. 96% of the Vedas is materialistic dharma. Then we need to evolve from Circum Karma Yoga to Nishkam to Jnana Yoga. Jnana Yoga is the Buddhi Yoga that Krishna was talking about. And acting Karma Yoga is on these 2 stages. So when one progresses through Karma Yoga, then he'll come to Jnana Yoga, then he'll come to Astanga Yoga, and then he'll come to Bhakti Yoga. So these different progressions. Now let me give you an example. A doctor, let's say we have a doctor, and initially the doctor, all he's interested in is making money. So he goes to the priest and he says, priest, can you tell me what yajna I need to do so that I can make lots of money? So the priest tell him, you do these yajnas and you'll make a lot of money. That is karma kanda. He's not interested in Vishnu, he's not interested in devotion, he's not interested in anything. Then he evolves by association of the priest. So for example, when the priest is doing Lakshmi Puja, so that the doctor can become wealthy, before the priest starts the Lakshmi Puja, he installs the coconut that represents Vishnu. And then he chants certain mantras glorifying Vishnu. And the doctor will say, after the puja is over, the doctor will say, please, why are you glorifying Vishnu? I want Lakshmi. I want Lakshmi Devi's mercy. So then the priest will say, actually, all the demigods, they are dependent on Lord Vishnu. Lord Vishnu is the supreme Lord that bestows and gives permission. And Lakshmi Devi, she is the energy of the Supreme Lord, the goddess of fortune. So we need to get the blessings of Lord Vishnu as well, so that we can get her blessings. So in this way, he introduces Lord Vishnu. And by that knowledge, the doctor starts to become aware. He starts to hear about in this chapter, text 9, the Lord is going to say how we need to act for the pleasure of Vishnu. So he slowly evolves. In circumkarma, he is attached to the fruits of work as well as the work. So he's a doctor. So if I go to him and I say, doctor, come, let's, come join the temple. He'll say, no, don't worry, I'm a doctor. I'm happy being a doctor. Or we tell him, please come do some devotional service. So, it's a Rati Yatra, come cut some potatoes. He'll say, no, I'm not interested. If you're sick, you come to me, I'll sort you out. Otherwise, I'm not here to cut potatoes. So he's attached to being a doctor, which is the work itself. And he's also attached to the fruits of being a doctor, money. So in this way, we'll tell him, no problem. Okay, just give us donation, just sponsor the plates and cups. So he says, no problem. So he sponsors the plates and cups. So in this way, he engages in devotional service and he gets purified. The devotee will also give him prasadam. So he becomes purified. Then slowly, as he purifies himself, he then goes to Nishkam Karma. In Nishkam Karma now, he's becoming detached from the fruits because he's slowly giving more and more of his fruits, which is the money that he's accumulating, but he's still attached to the work. So he's not going to give up being a doctor, but he's happy to slowly come and engage in devotional service, cut some potatoes. And he'll also help the devotees by giving them medical treatment, giving them free medicine, etc. So he's becoming purified. Then as he evolves, naturally in Krishna consciousness, we skip these two stages, but we get the benefit of them. Jnana Yoga is generally for the renounce order, where they would renounce and cultivate knowledge. And Astanga Yoga is generally for the yogis that practice Astanga Yoga. But the devotee, in this case, the doctor, he'll become purified, and then eventually he'll say, okay, I now am ready to join Krishna full-time and may become full-time devotee. So in this way, he was attached to the fruits, making money. Then he slowly became detached. He became detached from being a doctor, and now he's fully engaged in devotional service. So this is how we evolve in the yoga ladder. So Arjuna said, "Oh Janardhan, oh Keshav, why do you want to engage me in this ghastly warfare if you think that intelligence is better than fruit of work?" So Arjuna is trying to understand what Krishna told him about Buddhi Yoga and fruit of work. My intelligence is bewildered by your equivocal instruction. Therefore, please tell me decisively which will be most beneficial for me. So from 3 to text 9, Krishna is going to elaborate and explain. The Supreme Personality of Godhead said, "O sinless Arjuna, I've already explained that there are two classes of men who try to realize the self. Some are inclined to understand it by empirical philosophical speculation, and others by devotional service." So the empirical philosophical speculation is the jnana path, where people are more inclined to study. They renounce they renounce activities, and they try to engross themselves in studying scripture. So it's the path of sannyas. And the more practical path for majority of people, souls, is the path of devotional service, karma yoga. Not by merely abstaining from work can one achieve freedom from reaction, nor by renunciation alone can one attain perfection. So it's not that if you renounce activities, you can achieve freedom and can become free. And it's also not by abstaining from work or just by renunciation. Why? Because even if we abstain from work and renounce, mentally, you still thinking. And mental thinking is also action. So it's not just external renunciation of work. Everyone is forced to act helplessly according to the qualities he has acquired from the modes of material nature. Therefore, no one can refrain from doing something, not even for a moment. So activity is really part of the soul. The soul is active 24 hours a day. One who restrains the senses of actions, but whose mind dwells on sense objects, certainly deludes himself and is called a pretender. Somebody may renounce work. Somebody may become a sannyasi. But if he's thinking, if his mind is thinking of sense objects, then Krishna is saying he's a pretender. And you'll see Krishna will bring this point up of pretending again and again, that to be dishonest and not sincere in the process of Krishna consciousness, spiritual life, is not appreciated by the Lord. That means, for example, I have a bead bag to just show people that I'm chanting, but I'm not chanting. Or I renounce, I'm taking sannyas, but actually I'm attached to the opposite gender. This is pretending, and this is dangerous for one's spiritual life. On the other hand, if a sincere person tries to control the active senses by the mind and begins karma yoga in Krishna consciousness without attachment, he is by far superior. So you could be a grihastha, a married person, engaging Krishna consciousness, regulated Krishna consciousness nicely. Krishna is saying you are far more better than someone who's taken to the renounced order of life and is still contemplating on sense objects. 3.8, perform your prescribed duty, for doing so is better than not working. One cannot even maintain one's physical body without work. So even somebody who renounces work, you'll find that they have to go back. So they have to go door to door begging. That's work. So no one can stop work. We have to work to maintain our body, and we have to work in such a way that we advance. So Krishna is now telling us how to work. This is the secret of working. Whatever you do, this is the secret. Work done as a sacrifice for Vishnu has to be performed. Otherwise, work causes bondage in this material world. Therefore, son of Kunti, perform your prescribed duties for his satisfaction, and in that way, you will always remain free from bondage. So if we simply work as a sacrifice on behalf of, for the pleasure of, we do everything for the Lord, then we will never be entangled. And not only will we not be entangled, but we'll also be purified of all our past entanglement. And this is how we can achieve freedom from material existence. In the purport, Srila Prabhupada says, nothing should be performed for sense gratification, but everything should be done for the satisfaction of Krishna. This practice will not only save one from the reaction of work, but also gradually elevate one to transcendental loving service of the Lord, which alone can raise one to the kingdom of God. So without coming to the level of loving service to Krishna, there is no question of going back to Godhead. Going back to Godhead is not, it's not like a moment's work. Okay, I know Krishna, I know I must chant Hare Krishna and I'm going back home. No, it's about developing, reviving our transcendental loving relationship with the Supreme. as long as our relationship is not revived, there is no question of perfection. Now, second section, Krishna is now going to Lord Krishna is going to now describe karma kanda to karma yoga. So now we are progressing to karma yoga. 10 to 12. In the beginning of creation, the Lord of all creatures sent forth generations of men and demigods, along with sacrifices for Vishnu, and blessed them by saying, "Be thou happy by this yajna," sacrifice, because its performance will bestow upon you everything desirable for living happily and achieving liberation. The demigods, being pleased by sacrifices, will also please you, and thus by cooperation between men and demigods, prosperity will reign for all. In charge of the various necessities of life, the demigods, being satisfied the performance of yajna, sacrifice, will supply all necessities to you. But he who enjoys such gifts without offering them to the demigods in return is certainly a thief. So here we see how Lord Krishna is making very clear that he wants every living entity in this creation to be happy and achieve liberation. He wants everyone to have sufficient prosperity. So no one in this world should be suffering. But the formula that Krishna has given is that we have to perform sacrifices. We're getting resources. The demigods are giving us different resources. So if we do not perform, if we do not pay for those resources, then those resources will be taken away. Consider ESCOM is providing electricity. So in the normal sense, ESCOM is providing electricity and we have to pay for the electricity. If we don't pay, then they have the full right to cut the electricity and stop giving us the electricity. Similarly, we are using all the resources that the demigods are providing. If we do not perform sacrifices which are prescribed in the Vedas to the demigods, they will stop providing the resources. And if we perform the sacrifices as stipulated in the Vedas, then Krishna says there will be cooperation between men and demigods, and prosperity will reign for all. So this is why Krishna on the battlefield of Kurukshetra is encouraging Arjuna to fight so that they can defeat the Kauravas, establish the Pandavas to rule under Yudhishthira Maharaj's reign. And in this way, because he understands the science, he will make sure that the sacrifices perform so that this cooperation is there and everyone will be happy. We find during Maharaj Parikshit and even Maharaj Yudhishthira's reign, no one was suffering. Everybody had ample. So this is Ram Rajya. This is the proper method of ruling. Prabhupada in the purport says, the material creation of the Lord, by the Lord of creatures, which is Vishnu, is a chance offered to the conditioned souls to come back home, back to Godhead. All living entities within the material creation are conditioned by material nature because of the forgetfulness of their relationship with Vishnu or Krishna, the Supreme Personality of Godhead. So the material world is actually a place for us to go back home. It's the opportunity, human form especially, is the opportunity for us to understand the Lord, understand our relationship, perfect our life, and go back home, back to Godhead. 2:13, very, very wonderful verse. How do we perform sacrifice in relation to food? So Krishna says, Yagna Shishtana Shinchanto Muchante Sarvakil Vishay Unjate Te Twagamam Papa Ye Panchatatma Karanat. The devotees of the Lord are released from all kinds of sins because they eat food which is offered first for sacrifice. Others who prepare food for personal sense enjoyment verily eat only sin. So why we eat prasadam? Because it is blessed. We are offering what we prepare first to the Supreme Lord, and when the Supreme Lord accepts it, then it becomes mercy, prasadam. And that is spiritualized, which means there's no reaction. Sometimes people give the argument, oh, so you're eating fruit. But fruit also is living, so you're also killing. Now, on one hand, yes and no. So take, for example, this apple. This apple came from an apple tree. When you pluck the apple from the tree does not die, but you have an apple. So in that sense, you are not killing. There may be a carrot that's in the ground, and you pull the carrot out completely. So in that sense, yes. So there is killing. But because the Lord makes arrangements that I need to eat, the Lord is making very clear that we can offer the foodstuffs that we prepare for him. And when we offer it to him, it's a kind of a gesture to say, thank you, my Lord, for this. You please honor it first. It's like a father buying a chocolate for the son, a carob bar. The father buys a carob bar, chocolate bar for the son. The son, when he gets that carob bar, the first thing he's going to say is, thank you. And then he's going to peel, he's going to open the pack, and he's going to offer the first piece to the father. This is loving reciprocation. So like that, we have to offer our food. It is extremely important. If we do not offer our food, then, as Krishna says, we eat only sin. We eat suffering. Now, I'm 100% sure no one in this world wants to suffer. So if you don't want to suffer, we must offer our food. We'll find that in the beginning, it's very difficult. Sometimes we're cooking and we find that, people are used to tasting. Even when they do an offering, it's like they can't wait to eat. But as you progress in spiritual life, you'll start offering to the Supreme Lord with greater devotion. You'll be more patient. So it starts off. It's a good practice, and it's a very important practice in spiritual life to be grateful, and you show that gratitude to the Supreme Lord by first offering to the Supreme Lord. From 3:14 to 16, Krishna is now talking about how we are dependent on the Lord. All living entities subsist on food grains, which are produced from rain. Rains are produced by performance of yajna, sacrifice, and yajna is born of prescribed duties. Regulated activities are prescribed in the Vedas, and the Vedas are directly manifested from the Supreme Personality of God. Consequently, the all-pervading transcendence is eternally situated in acts of sacrifice. My dear Arjuna, one who does not follow in human life the cycle of sacrifice, thus established by the Vedas, certainly leads a life full of sin. Living only for the satisfaction of the senses, such a person lives in vain. So here the Lord is encouraging us to perform sacrifice and understand that that sacrifice is very important because we are dependent. If for us to survive, we need food grains. Prabhupada would encourage people to grow their own grains. But for you to grow your grains, you need rain. And you get rain by yajna, performance of yajna. Yajna is performed when you perform your prescribed duties, which are then described in the Vedas. Now, the purpose of human life, in essence, is to please the Supreme Lord. The best process to please the Supreme Lord is unalloyed, undeviated devotional service. The act of sacrificing our mind, our body, our words, whatever facility we have given in devotion to the Supreme. And the best yajna for this age of Kali Yuga, is Sankirtan Yajna, chanting the holy names. So previously, there were many other forms of yajnas described in the Vedas. In this age, the prescribed yajna is congregational chanting of the holy names of the Lord, given to us by Lord Chaitanya Mahaprabhu, who is the Yuga avatar for this age. And the best mantra to be chanted in congregation is the Hare Krishna mantra according to the Kalishandran Upanishad, which Lord Chaitanya Mahaprabhu has given us. So this is the best process, and simply embracing this process, we would fulfill our obligation of performing sacrifice for everything that we have been given. And on top of that, we will start developing our loving relationship with the Supreme Lord, and we'll be living free from sin. Now we come to section 3, which is Nishkam Karma Yoga, acting dutifully with detachment to set the correct example. So 3:17 to 25, 17. But for one who takes pleasure in the self, whose human life is one of self-realization, and who is satisfied in the self alone, fully satiated, for him there is no duty. Now the Lord is describing those who perform karma yoga. As they evolve, they can now come to Nishkam Karma Yoga, where they're becoming more and more detached, even from the work, and eventually come to Jnana Yoga, where they can renounce. So it's a process of purification. A self-realized man has no purpose to fulfill in the discharge of his prescribed duties, nor has he any reason not to perform such work, nor has he any need to depend on any other living being, because he's totally self-realized. Therefore, without being attached to the fruits of activities, one should act as a matter of duty, for by working without attachment, one attains the Supreme. Kings such as Janak attain perfection solely by performance of prescribed duties. Therefore, just for the sake of educating people in general, one should perform your work. You should perform your work. Whatever action a great man performs, common men follow, and whatever standards he sets by exemplary acts, all the world pursues. O son of Pruta, there is no work prescribed for me within all the 3 planetary systems, nor am I in want of anything, nor have I a need to obtain anything, and yet I am engaged in prescribed duties. The Lord is acting as a charioteer, so he's doing something, even though he doesn't need to. For if I ever failed to engage in carefully performing prescribed duties or parta, certainly all men would follow my path. If I did not perform prescribed duties, all these worlds would be put to ruination. I would be the cause of creating unwanted population, and I would thereby destroy the peace of all living beings. As an ignorant performs their duties with attachment to the results, the learned men similarly act, but without attachment, for the sake of leading people on the right path. And Albert Einstein made a very interesting statement also. Setting an example is not the main means of influencing others. It is the only means. So if we want to, as parents, set an example to children or to teach children, instead of speaking, instead of saying, it's best by our own activities, by our actions. Krishna, by his own actions, is teaching. Similarly, we by our own actions have to teach. And even if one is a pure devotee of the Lord, even if one is self-realized, still he should act, even though there's no need for him to act. He should act for setting an example to others. So it's very important that we behave so that people can see our behavior, learn from our behavior, and in this way, try to practice spiritual life in their own life through behavior, not just through saying. Right? So very, very key point in terms of nobody should renounce their responsibilities and their duties because it's very difficult, let me renounce. Oh, this relationship is very difficult, let me renounce. Oh, my studies are very difficult, let me renounce. Oh, this job is very difficult, let me renounce. No, we should not prematurely renounce. We must understand that if we're going through some difficulties, it is for our own purification and we need to learn from it. not renounce. If you renounce prematurely without becoming purified, you will fall prey to that same obstacle that you were trying to avoid. You cannot cut corners in life. You have to go through life so that you can learn and purify your life. So that is very, very important. And therefore the Lord is encouraging Arjuna. You perform your duty. Don't think you can renounce and go, okay, I'm going to the forest, I'll just beg. No, because even there in the forest, you want to fight because you are Kshatriya. Therefore, do your duty, but do your duty in a detached spirit. Offer everything to Krishna. 25 to 29. As the ignorant performs their duties with attachment to results, the learned may similarly act, but without attachment, for the sake of leading people on the right path. So as to not disrupt the minds of ignorant men attached to fruitive results of prescribed duties, a learned person should not induce them to stop. Rather, by working in the spirit of devotion, he should engage them in all sorts of activities for the gradual development of Krishna consciousness. So people who are attached, we shouldn't tell them to give up work, but we should be expert to engage them in Krishna-related activities. In this way, by engaging them, by engaging their wealth, then slowly they will become purified and evolve in their spiritual life. The spirit soul, bewildered by the influence of false ego, thinks himself the doer of activities that are in actuality carried out by the three modes of material nature. So here the Lord is describing how by nature the spirit soul is influenced by this false ego, thinking I'm doing everything. When you go to people to ask donation or come do some service, they say, no, I'm too busy. I'm working hard. I'm making all my money. And Krishna, as we mentioned in chapter 2, is going to bring this point up. This point was brought up in chapter 2. It's going to be brought up in this. It's brought up here, and it's going to be brought up in the further chapters. This point about you not the only doer. There are other factors, other personalities that are involved in the outcome of every activity. If you consider the soul is in the region of the heart. Now, if the soul is in the region of the heart, the soul really does not do anything. The soul is desiring, and through that desire, certain the Lord is making arrangements and things are being done, specifically the three modes of material nature. One who is in knowledge of the absolute truth, almighty armed, does not engage himself in the senses and sense gratification, knowing well the difference between work in devotion and work for fruitive results. Bewildered by the modes of material nature, the ignorant fully engage themselves in material activities and become attached. But the wise should not unsettle them, although these duties are inferior due to the performer's lack of knowledge. So we have to be compassionate, and we have to learn how to help people so that they can progress. It's like a teacher who is expert to help students go from one grade to another. Then verses 30 to 35. Therefore, O Arjuna, surrender all your work unto me, with full knowledge of me, without desires for profit, with no claims to proprietorship, free from lethargy, fight. So Krishna is giving us very, very wonderful instructions that we should surrender all our works to him. We should have full knowledge of him. So we have to keep cultivating knowledge about Krishna from Bhagavad Gita, Srimad Bhagavatam, Chaitanya Charitamrita. We should not be desiring profits, and understand that we're not proprietorship. We are not proprietors of anything. We should be free from laziness and fight. That means act according to our duty. So laziness also is a dangerous quality in spiritual life. If you're lazy, you cannot progress in spiritual life. So spiritual life, Prabhupada says, even 24 hours is very little for a devotee. There is no question of being lazy. 31. Those persons who execute their duties according to my injunctions and who follow these teachings faithfully, without envy, become free from the bondage of fruitive actions. So Krishna is making very clear that if we follow his advice, follow his instructions, and those who follow with faith, not envying Krishna's position, we become free from fruitive activities. That means we can live in this world and not be of this world and not be bound to this world. We can slowly detach ourselves completely so that we can go back to the spiritual world, return to where we belong. Now there are those that will say, well, I don't care. I'm not interested. Okay, Krishna says, but those who out of envy disregard these teachings and do not follow them regularly are to be considered bereft of all knowledge, befooled and ruined in their endeavors for perfection. So your choice, Krishna is giving choice. We can either follow or we don't follow. If you follow, you become free from bondage and happy. If you don't follow, you will suffer and become bound. Even a man of knowledge acts according to his own nature. For everyone follows the nature is acquired from three modes. What can repression accomplish? There are principles to regulate attachment and aversion pertaining to the senses and their objects. One should not come under the control of such attachment and aversion because they are stumbling blocks on the path of self-realization. So likes and dislikes. Oh, I like this, I don't like this. Attachment, oh, I'm attached to this, I'm not attached to that. We need to move away from likes and dislikes. We need to move away from attachments and aversions. We need to slowly start to cultivate the mood. What pleases Prabhupada? What pleases Krishna? What pleases the Vaishnavas? That's what we should do. So when we start cultivating this consciousness of doing what pleases Hari, Guru, and Vaishnavas, then our life becomes perfect. Because now we are moving away from ourselves as the center and putting Hari, Guru, and Vaishnavas in the center. It is far better to discharge one's prescribed duties, even though faultily, than another's duties perfectly. Destruction in the cause of performing one's own duty is better than engaging in another's duty. To follow another's path is dangerous. So Krishna is encouraging us that it's better that we do our own duty, even though it falls. It's okay if you make mistakes. It's okay if you're not perfect. But at least do what you are inclined to do. Don't imitate somebody else. Don't pretend to do somebody else's work. And don't do other people's work because, or try to be in their shoes to do what they're doing. Because by nature, you will always fall back to what you are conditioned to do. So in terms of duties, in terms of activities, in terms of prescribed duties, do what is natural for you in terms of what's your inclination. Even though it may be, there may be some faults, it's okay. The Lord will not hold those faults against you. But imbued those activities, imbue them with the attitude of sacrifice, the attitude of offering it to the Supreme Lord, the attitude of detachment. And if you do it in that spirit, for the pleasure of the Lord, then you will progress in karma yoga. And then the last section, beware of lust and anger. Krishna says in text, Arjuna says in text 36, O descendant of Vrishni, by what is one impelled to sinful acts even unwillingly, as if engaged by force? So the Lord spoke about engaging in one's duty, trying to be detached, etc. And Arjuna is thinking, but people are so forced to do things even though they don't want to. And sometimes they're forced to do the wrong things. So how come people are forced to do the wrong things? Like, if somebody's smoking, you ask them, do you know smoking is bad? Even on the cigarette box, it says dangerous for your health. So how is it that you know it's dangerous? You know it's bad for your health. You know you can get cancer, but still you smoke. So what is causing people to engage in these activities, even though they may know that? It's like by an external force, unwillingly. So very wonderful question by Arjuna. Prabhupada says in the purport, a living entity, as part and parcel of the Supreme, is originally spiritual, pure, and free from all material contaminations. Therefore, by nature, he is not subject to the sins of the material world. But when he is in contact with material nature, he acts in many sinful ways without hesitation, and sometimes even against his will. So when we come in contact with this material world, this material nature, we become influenced by a certain force. And Arjuna wants to know, what is that force that even against my own will, my own desire, I'm forced to act? Like people will, married couples will come together, then they fight, and eventually they can end up wanting to kill each other. So what is that force that drives them to even kill each other when they started off enjoying each other's company? Krishna responds, Shri Bhagavan Uvacha, Kama Esha Krodha Esha, Raja Guno Samudbhava, Mahasano Mahapapa, Papma, Vidya Enam Iha Vairinam. The Supreme Personality of God had said, it is lust only, Arjuna, which is born of the contact with the material mode of passion and later transformed into wrath, and which is the all-devouring sinful enemy of this world. So in our situation, if we have to say where is the enemy or who is the enemy, Krishna is telling us it is lust only. In the 16th chapter we will come, Krishna tells us there are 3 gates to hell: lust, anger, and greed. So this verse is describing this first enemy, which is lust. And it is one of the enemies we need to curb. It is born out of Rajaguna, out of passion. That means if we transcend and evolve from passion to goodness, we can also curb lust. If we glide down further to the lower mode of ignorance, tamagun, then it can also be destructive. So we want to make sure that we evolve to a higher mode so that we don't get trapped by this enemy of lust, anger, and greed, which can lead to hell. In Chaitanya Charitamrita, there's the description of love and lust. Kama prema donahakara bimina lakshana loha ara hema yaiche swarupe vilakshana. Lust and love have different characteristics, just as iron and gold have different natures. Atmendriya priti vancha tare balikam. Krishnendriya priti icha dare premanam. The desire to gratify one's own senses is kam, lust. But the desire to please the senses of Lord Krishna is prem. So here's the definition of lust and love. In the material world, people say, oh, I love you. Well, let's consider that. I love you. Krishna is saying, or the verse in Chaitanya Charitamrita is describing that the desire to gratify my own senses is lust, not love. So when you tell someone, I love you, really, it's about your senses. So there's no question of love there. It's really, oh, I lust you. And the other person will say, oh, I also lust you. Because each one is interested in how you can fulfill my senses. So it's not a world of love. It's a world of lust. Love is when you want to please Krishna's senses. There's devotional service. That is love, to please Krishna's senses. So lust also has its origin in transcendence. And lust originates when the soul inherits love for Krishna, which is then reflected back upon himself. Thus, lust, the intense desire to please one's senses, is a reflection of the soul's original intense desire to please Krishna's senses. So if you consider in the spiritual world, the soul that is in the spiritual world is in loving relationship with Krishna. The soul is impacted by the potency, by the energy of love. And when the soul comes in this material world, he becomes the focus, his senses become the focus, pleasing his senses become the focus. And therefore that love that is in the spiritual world actually becomes transformed into lust. So lust is really the same force that is there in the spiritual world of love, but it's perverted. Love brings us closer to Krishna. Lust takes us away from Krishna. Love is Krishna in the center. Lust is your senses are in the center. So by transforming lust into love, we can go back to the spiritual world. Consider that fish that comes from the ocean and is put onto land. It's compared to the soul coming from the spiritual world and coming to this material world. That fish, by nature, is meant to be in the ocean. No matter what the fish does to satisfy its senses, it will never ever be satisfied. Similarly, when the soul comes into this material world, no matter what the soul does in relation to lust to satisfy its senses, it will never ever be happy. It needs to be placed into the environment of love. Then Lord Krishna tells us different degrees of the lust. As fire is covered by smoke, as a mirror is covered by dust, or as the embryo is covered by the womb, the living entity is similarly covered by different degrees of lust. So now, not only is this most sinful, devouring enemy there, lust, but it also has different degrees. And we can look at these different degrees as fire is covered by smoke. So the fire is covered by smoke is one aspect. Then there's mirror. The mirror is covered by dust. And then the womb, when a child is in the womb. So you find that each covering is greater than the other. So if you compare these three levels of coverings, we can look at these three levels of coverings in different ways. One is smoke and fire. This is compared to the beginning of Krishna consciousness. Then the next one is the mirror and the dust. This is compared to cleansing of by the spiritual methods. So we are becoming more and more cleansed. And then the embryo and the womb, this is knowledge that's completely covered. Then we can look at another way of looking at these three comparisons or layers. The smoke and fire is compared to the consciousness of human beings. Mirror and dust is compared to the consciousness of birds and beasts. And the embryo and the womb is compared to helpless entities like trees. So the greater the lust, then the greater the lust means that the consciousness of the living entity is covered to a greater degree. Now in human life, we have the opportunity, a chance to kindle the fire of Krishna consciousness by carefully handling the smoke. One can conquer lust by cultivating Krishna consciousness under proper guidance. So we need to use that enemy, lust, and try to dovetail that enemy of lust in regulated Krishna conscious activities, and in this way slowly progress. And that's what the Lord is going to tell us now from 39 onwards. Thus the wise living entity's pure consciousness becomes covered by his eternal enemy in the form of lust, which is never satisfied and which burns like fire. Sometimes we may have this point, oh, I'm attached to watching TV. Okay, I'll watch one more program and then I'll stop. The problem of watching one more program is when you satisfy lust or when you try to fulfill that lust, all that happens is that lust becomes even greater. It's like putting fuel on fire. When you put fuel on fire, all that happens is that the fire increases, intensified. Okay, the fire doesn't get extinguished. So it's not about fulfilling your desires to enjoy separately from Krishna. It's about engaging your senses in such a way that the lust becomes neutralized, transformed into love. Where is this lust situated? The senses, the mind, and the intelligence are the sitting places of this lust. Through them, lust covers the real knowledge of the living entity and bewilders him. So the poor living entity, he is completely surrounded. Consider the living entity is encased in the subtle body. And the subtle body is made of mind, intelligence, and false ego. So the intelligence and mind that is encasing the living entity, the spirit soul, that is infused with lust. Then the senses, the bodily senses are infused with lust. So in this way, the senses, they all are interested in trying to enjoy different sense objects. And in this way, the poor living entity is completely bewildered and trapped. So how to curb this lust? Lord Krishna tells us, text 41. Therefore, O Arjuna, best of the Bharatas, in the very beginning, curb this great symbol of sin, lust, by regulating the senses and slay this destroyer of knowledge and self-realization. So as soon as you see that I'm getting influenced by lust, right at the beginning, one needs to curb. So that's the first advice Krishna is giving. Don't let it, don't let it be fulfilled and don't let it strengthen. Right on the onset, like I gave yesterday example, when you contemplate Dhyayato Vyashan Pumsa, when you contemplate that threads of thoughts that you're contemplating to enjoy, try to cut it right there. Naturally, for that, you need strong intelligence to be able to do that. You need to have some spiritual strength to be able to do that. You need good association to do that. But that's the first advice that Krishna is giving. Then the Lord is saying, by regulating the senses, we can also curb this great enemy of lust. So regulating means we have to eat. So, okay, you have to eat. Don't just eat anything and everything. Eat Krishna Prasad. You have to see things. Okay, see the deity form of the Lord. You have to smell. Okay, smell the flowers offered to the Lord. You have to hear things, music. Okay, hear Krishna Kirtan. So in this way, you are engaging all your senses. You need to act. Okay, act in service of Krishna. So by engaging all your senses in Krishna activities, Krishna-related activities, devotional activities, this curbs lust, this purifies the senses. And the more you do that, the more the lust is being purified. It's transforming lust into love because it's the same power, it's the same potency. It's just that in the spiritual world, that potency is love. In the material world, that same potency is acting in a reverse way in the form of lust. So we have to learn the art of Prabhupada's dovetailing. Don't stop the activities, simply dovetail them. And if you do this, then you will get transcendental knowledge and you'll be safe on the path of self-realization. Otherwise, lust will destroy one on the path. And 42 and 43, last two verses, Krishna says, the working senses are superior to dull matter. Mind is higher than the senses. Intelligence is still higher than the mind. And he, the soul, is even higher than the intelligence. So there's a gradation of energies. The soul, which is superior, spiritual, is higher than the mundane intelligence, which is higher than the mundane mind, which is higher than dull matter. So this is how the soul should be able to control the intelligence, to control the mind, and to control matter and the senses. Thus, knowing oneself to be transcendental to material senses, mind, and intelligence. O mighty armed Arjuna, one should steady the mind by deliberate spiritual intelligence, Krishna consciousness, and thus by spiritual strength conquer this insatiable enemy known as lust. So transcendental knowledge is very, very important. And here Krishna is saying by deliberate spiritual intelligence, that means we should understand the situation we're in, and we have to consciously try to progress in spiritual life through spiritual strength that we get from the Lord, that we get from the association of devotees. Prabhupada in the purport says, this third chapter of the Bhagavad Gita is conclusively directive to Krishna consciousness by knowing oneself as the eternal servant of the Supreme Personality of Godhead, without considering impersonal voidness, the ultimate end. In the material existence of life, one is certainly influenced by the propensities of lust, propensities for lust and desire for dominating the resources of material nature. Desire for overloading and for sense gratification is the greatest enemy of the conditioned soul. But by the strength of Krishna consciousness, one can control the material senses, the mind and the intelligence. One may not give up work and prescribe duties all of a sudden, but by gradually developing Krishna consciousness, one can be situated in a transcendental position without being influenced by the material senses and the mind. By steady intelligence directed towards one's pure identity. This is the sum and substance of this chapter. In the immature stage of material existence, philosophical speculation and artificial attempts to control the senses by so-called practice of yogic postures can never help a man towards spiritual life. He must be trained in Krishna consciousness by higher intelligence. So very, very, very wonderful chapter and very, very important instructions regarding our greatest enemy that is there within us. Not outside, not people, but actually that enemy is right in you. So if you want to protect yourself, if you want to be, be happy and to become free from all suffering, we have to start with the enemy that is right within us. And that enemy, Krishna is saying, the greatest enemy is lust, the desire to enjoy separately from Krishna. And yes, it's an all-devouring and powerful enemy. But by systematic regulating your senses, practicing Krishna consciousness, starting with offering your food, chanting the holy names, engaging in devotional service, gradually, slowly, you can purify yourself and come out from the clutches of this most sinful, devouring enemy called lust. Srila Prabhupada ki jai. Any questions or comments anyone has? All okay? All right, good. If there are no questions. Now, since COVID, we don't do Sankirtan, so what happens? So we may not be doing Sankirtan in terms of devotees may not be going outside because there is a risk, but we can still do Sankirtan, just like, for example, in the beginning of this class, in the beginning of all the classes, I'm playing a kirtan. Now, when I'm playing the kirtan, what I would be recommending and hoping everyone is doing is that you're also following the kirtan. Because the kirtan is the singer sings and the audience respond, chorus. So when the singer is singing, even on the online, we can also respond. It's not that we don't need to respond. And if everybody's responding, even though it's a recording, we find that that is Sankirtan, congregational chanting. And if you see, even right now, devotees across the globe are still doing Sankirtan. Just depends on different places. In Mayapur, a few days ago, they had Harinam Sankirtan, in the temples, because they may not be allowing public, but in the temples, Sankirtan is going, congregational chanting is going on. We could play Prabhupada's Kirtan and chant together. So Sankirtan is still going. It may not be that we are able to go in masses on the streets because of the risk, but we want to be cautious of that and stay at home and still do Sankirtan in your house with your family. So that is still Sankirtan, and that benefit is still there, right? So if you're pure and you're completely immune to situations, then you can go out and have Sankirtan, right? It depends on the eligibility. If you like me, and you may not be pure enough to counteract the disease, then it's best to have Kirtan in your own house. So that is still Sankirtan. So Sankirtan is still going on. Any other questions? Yes, we can have Kirtan in our own space, at least for now. No problem at all. Prabhupada says in one beautiful purport, Prabhupada says, you can have Sankirtan, the parents can have Sankirtan with the children. So even if it's one or two, no problem. You don't even need cartels. You can just clap. That is Sankirtan. More than one person. In fact, in the Hillbrow temple, we didn't have many devotees. So when I was doing japa, because there were very few devotees and I needed association, then what I would do is mentally I would take a bead bag and I would, in my mind, picture I'm taking the bead bag, I'm knocking on the door, there's a door, and the door says Mr. Mind. So I knock on the door, I go open the door, there's Mr. Mind sitting there, and I give him a bead bag and I say, please chant. And then I knock on the other door and the intelligence there, and I give the intelligence a bead bag. And then I have all the senses who are all conscious, and I give a bead bag to all the conscious cells in my body. And then I tell them, please all chant. And they're all busy chanting. So we're having Sankirtan, japa together, congregational japa. So there's no lack of people and entities to engage. Even if you're alone, you've got many cells, many senses, you've got mind, you've got intelligence, you can have Sankirtan. Okay, thank you very much for your time. Hare Krishna.
Hare Krishna.
Hare
We shall
Krishna.
see you tomorrow.
Yes.
Srila Prabhupada ki jai.
Yeah.